Assalamu alaikum everyone, you're watching SamiSpeaks. My name is Sami and Nassim. It's good to be back with you all again. We've got a big show for you all this week with a lot to get into, a lot to discuss. I want to have a look today at the interview that I saw between Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, and the Israeli Army Radio. Not really many statements worth getting into in terms of the full interview, but there was one statement that was made by Bibi where he said he described the UK as the Islamic Republic of Britain, right? So we're going to get into that because obviously, as you can imagine, a lot to address there. We're also today going to be having a look at a lot of the accusations that are being thrown at Restore Britain, Rupert Lowe, Charlie Downs. They are being called anti-Semites, right? Is there any truth to that? We'll have a look at the statements that they've made, the both of them, whether they're actually anti-Semitic and everything in between. And halal slaughter, kosher slaughter, whether there's any consistency to what they're doing or hypocrisy, right? And I beg to challenge them being consistent in their dietary bans. Our featured story, though, today is James Arday being found dead in his home in South London at 41, aged 41, very young. It's very sad to see. So we're going to get into that right now, inshallah. So James Arday was found dead in his home in South London on Thursday. He was only 41, so he was very, very young. He had 2 children. He had a wife, and now his wife is a widow, right? So it's very, very sad to see what's actually gone on here. The police have said at this stage that it is unusual, right? We didn't expect this. Of course we didn't. But there's no suspicion. At this moment in time, we don't have any suspicion, right? They haven't said whether there were any wounds found or anything like that. So we just kind of have to ask the question, what actually went on here? If you didn't know, James Arday is an ex-Cambridge professor. He taught sociology at Cambridge. I believe he started teaching there in 2023. Albeit he resigned. He resigned on the 5th of August after just much scrutiny by the press, a lot of the right-wing press like The Spectator, where they were sort of just really hyper investigating his background, his career, his academic background. If you didn't know, he's got a decorated past in academia. He holds a bachelor's degree. He holds 2 master's degree, I believe. And he also holds a PhD, right? So this guy is very educated. Not many people can say they have that many qualifications. And I feel like that's where a lot of this hate and this criticism is coming from. I think a lot of these guys, these white guys, I'm sorry to say, are jealous of this guy's academic past, right? Because a lot of these guys on the far right, they don't even have a GCSE. They don't have GCSEs. They don't have A-levels. Never mind a degree, 2 masters and a PhD, but nevertheless, he holds that. They're calling him a DEI hire. How can he be a DEI hire when he has that many qualifications? He's got a decorated past in teaching. He's taught at many different universities, so it's not like he was just given Cambridge on a silver platter. No, that's not the case. He definitely worked his way up. I believe his background is physical education, so PE. He taught PE, and then he moved on to sociology, right? He is a bit of a left-wing type of guy, right? He seems like a soft guy, but that's fine, right? He can have his own opinions, no problem. I'll probably disagree with him on those opinions, but the smear campaign that was targeted towards him the past couple months, really starting in July, where I can't remember the name of this, but a sort of another sort of university professor, philosopher, really started this campaign saying that his PhD, his dissertation, had plagiarism, right, found within it. John Moore University, where he studied his PhD, looked into that fact, and they found no wrongdoing, right? He was completely cleared of that plagiarism accusation, completely exonerated, okay? So this philosopher levies other such accusations, like fundraising concerns. He was sort of raising funds. He would raise funds and they were saying that the money that he declared he raised was a lot more than that was actually raised. So, you know, they're really hyper analyzing his life, and you've got to ask the question, why were they doing this? Why were they hyper analyzing his life? Was it because he was a black man? Maybe. Maybe not. But if you were a white guy, you still had your bachelor's, you still had your 2 masters, you had your PhD. The same guy, but a white guy. Would he have faced this much scrutiny? I don't think he would, I'm sorry to say. We look at Matt Goodwin, he released a book, didn't he? Suicide of a Nation, I believe it was called. And it was found, I don't know if it was just an accusation or it was found, but they were accusing him of using AI within that book, right? And not just, you know, certain parts of it, but like massive chunks of the book, footnotes of the book having loads of uses of AI, right? Did anyone hear about that? This is probably the first time you're hearing about that, right? So this is my point. Matt Goodwin, a white guy, reform guy, works for the Reform Party. Does he get this much public backlash and scrutiny? No, because he's a white guy, right? So to call him a DEI hire when he's decorated academically with all of these various qualifications, sorry to say, but you sound jealous, right? You sound jealous. So he's found dead in his home. Like I said, not much has been released publicly yet. His friend has come forward and said that he received a voice note the same day he was found dead, where Jason Arday said that, you know, look, I can't do this anymore. There's just too much pressure. Obviously, he just resigned from his stint at Cambridge not long ago now. He said it's just too much. And that was about it, right? That's all the information we have. Like I said, there's nothing been released about any wounds or anything like that. It's still entirely possible that he was killed. He could have been murdered. But the most likely outcome here is that he committed suicide, right? He's only 41, so it's going to be very unlikely that it was natural causes. What is most likely here is that it was suicide, but then it could also be the case that he was murdered, right? But if I was a betting man, which I'm not obviously because I'm a Muslim, but if I was, I think he probably overdosed or something like that, and intentionally, and he's obviously killed himself, which is very, very sad to see. And that's obviously something as Muslims we do not condone in the slightest, but we also don't condone this hate, right? This hate that we are seeing, I'm sorry to say, but, you know, we can't just look at this and say, all right, no problem, let's just move on. This guy has metaphorically been killed by the right wing. I'm sorry to say, but it's the truth, right? And not just the right wing, but those further on the right, okay? Not centre right, further on the right. I'm talking the Rupert Lowe crowd. I'm talking to you, right? Because these guys, with all due respect, are keyboard warriors. They're all big online, but when it comes to real life, they don't have a thing to say. You think these statements that they're making on the internet, on YouTube, on these social media platforms, on Twitter, they would make in real life with their employers? Do you think they would even dare to say these things in front of their employers? No, they wouldn't, because they're scared. But on Twitter, right, on YouTube, they say all sorts of stuff. I ran into one of these guys myself. He comments, oh, so-and-so, I'm an expert in Islam. I know about the religion, the Quran, the Hadith. I know about your deen, your fiqh, your aqidah. I'm like, okay, no problem. You debate me then. We can debate for the show, no problem. You can email me here. Any chickens out, of course. Because these guys don't know what, without the Google and the AI, we talk about AI with the plagiarism, right? But without the internet, they're nothing. Right? They're nothing, I'm sorry to say. So this is the same thing, is that they've harassed this guy online, right? Instead of having a productive conversation, they've harassed him, they've called him DEI high, I've saw worse, they probably issued death threats, said so-and-so about his skin colour, and look where he is now. I don't condone the suicide whatsoever, if it is suicide, if that is the case, right? But that is what is most likely. Me and you can agree on, it is most likely that the guy has killed himself, right? Which is so unfortunate to see with him having 2 children. But like I said, very unfortunate to see. If he was a white guy, would he have faced all of this backlash and scrutiny? I don't think he would have, right? I think that's quite clear, right? But we will continue to update with what's going on in regards to this case, because there is an open file and more information will come out. It is relatively new at this point in time, but we will continue to have a look at it, inshallah. I also today wanted to have a look at Rupert Lowe and Charlie Downs being accused of anti-Semitism, right? They are being accused of anti-Semitism. Are they anti-Semites? That's the question. Are they really anti-Semites, right? So what have the trades been saying? So it's mainly the Telegraph and the Daily Mail, both right-wing publications, but more centre-right, right? So they are sort of siding more with the reform at the moment. And they are calling Restore kind of like a neo-Nazi party, an ethno-nationalist party. What you've got to really understand is that the mainstream media, obviously we have our left-wing and right-wing dynamic here in the UK. But the right-wing doesn't go as far as some of the people, right? And I've argued this on the show before. I think it's a minority of people, right? But they don't go as far to the right as some of those people, like calling for every single non-white person to be deported from the United Kingdom, like every single Muslim to be deported from the United Kingdom. That to them is seen as like blasphemy. That's like completely antithetical to British values, which of course it is, right? Because it's a liberal democracy. It's not an authoritarian fascist state. So when they see those types of statements, they're like, this is crazy. But it's not really necessarily about Muslims here. We've looked at Muslims before on the show, as in regards to what they say about Muslims. It's about Jews now. So, is it true? What are the statements that Rupert Lowe and Charlie Downs have made? Now, Charlie Downs, the latter, hasn't really said that much. He described Farage, Nigel Farage, as being bought by Jews, right? Quote, bought by Jews. So he's saying he's bought by the Jews. And Charlie Downs, if you don't know, is the spokesperson of Restore Britain, right? So he's the spokesperson of Restore Britain. And he's also the co-founder, along with Rupert Lowe. So he co-founded Restore Britain. And he's actually a young guy. He's very young. I think he's only 25, right? Gen Z guy. And he is the spokesperson. And he's actually said, he said crazy things, but he's also described what's going on in Gaza as a genocide, right? He said it's a genocide. So obviously we agree with him there. And I think it's because he's a young guy, he can get away with saying stuff like that. But Rupert Lowe, on the other hand, we've seen from him that he is kind of like sort of an old traditional Tory type, and they tend to be pro-Israel. So is Rupert Lowe pro-Israel? Well, some of the statements that the trades are coming with, they're saying that Rupert Lowe has made many anti-Israel, anti-Jewish even statements, like he made a joke in Parliament where he said that he saw a camera and it was small, so he made a joke that it's a Jewish camera because, you know, Jews are tight, so they buy the smallest camera. He said that wasn't really politically correct to say. He said that in Parliament. He was pushed back. He was asked about that, and he said that, I don't remember making the joke, but maybe, right? We have him on tape saying it. But that's not the worst of it. He's described the grooming gang scandal, which we've debunked on the show, just complete rubbish. But he described that as being the UK's Holocaust. Oh my goodness, this guy is genuinely crazy. But he described it as the UK's Holocaust, where 6 million Jews, right? 6 million Jews are killed in the Holocaust. He's described that as 3,073 girls being victims of child sexual exploitation in Rotherham, in Telford, and in Oxford. You can't make this stuff up. You really can't. But besides that, obviously the Jewish community will take offense to that because they're not even in the slightest. What else has he said? What else has he said? He's trying to think now, what else did they... oh, yes, the kosher slaughter. So the kosher slaughter, the Jews are taking offense to this. They're saying that, you know, why do you want to ban kosher slaughter? We as Jews live in this country. We should be able to slaughter our meat however we like. Why do you have a problem with that? And that's a good question, right? Initially, Rupert Lowe was running on banning halal slaughter. And then he changed his position and he said, I'm going to ban halal slaughter. We're also going to ban kosher slaughter, right? We're going to do both. We're going to ban both of them. Now, the reason why he said that was because he was getting a lot of pushback from the Muslim community, but also his own supporters were saying, well, you know, why don't you also ban kosher slaughter? If you're going to ban halal slaughter, ban kosher slaughter, right? And he did concede that. And he started rebranding and saying, we're going to ban kosher slaughter as well, right? He would say it in like replies. At first, he would say, we're going to ban kosher slaughter, so that nobody really saw that. But then he was kind of forced into the position where it was made like a party policy, right? Part of the platform. Now, I don't want to digress too much, but if you actually look at this, you know, they talk about stunning, right? Stunning the animal. In Judaism, stunning the animal is not permissible, right? In kosher slaughter, you can't stun the animal. The animal must be alive, no stunning whatsoever. It can't be drowsy. And that's where you would cut the throat of the animal, right? So that is the kosher way of slaughtering an animal. In Islam, that's not the case, right? An animal can be stunned so long as the animal is still alive, right? It can be slightly unconscious, but as long as the animal is still alive, and then you cut the throat of the animal, that's fine, which is how the Brits and the English slaughter that meat anyway, right? If you actually look at the figures, 88% of halal meat here in the UK is stunned before the slaughter. So when they talk about banning halal meat, right, why did they start with halal meat where we stun anyway? The Jews are the ones that don't stun. So why didn't he, if your problem is stunning, no problem. Your problem is stunning for the animal, for the welfare of the animal, no problem. So why didn't you start with kosher meat? I've just told you we're allowed to stun in Islam. We're allowed to stun, no problem. I've just told you 88% of the halal meat in this country is stunned before slaughter. The Jews don't do that. That's forbidden in Judaism. You cannot stun the animal. Perfectly permissible in Islam. So why is it, and this is why I don't think Lowe is an anti-Semite, I actually think he's a rabid Zionist. But why is it, my friend, that you are talking about halal slaughter before you even talk about the kosher slaughter? You're forced into the position to ban kosher slaughter. You don't really want to, but you have to do it to look consistent. So why is it that you didn't start with kosher slaughter first? I've just told you 88% of our meat is slaughtered the same way you slaughter your meat. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is very clear. 88% of our meat is stunned. That's not allowed in Judaism. So I hope I've made the point very clear. When they debate halal slaughter, bring this to them. Because this is the problem. They probably don't even know how meat is slaughtered. These are the types of the intelligence we're talking about with these individuals, these far-right individuals, including the party leader. They talk about, oh, you can't, you must stun your meat because it's kinder to the animal and it suppresses, reduces the harm to the animal. It doesn't feel the pain as much. Okay, no problem. We stun anyway. We don't have a problem with stunning. So what are you talking about? You're talking baloney. I'm sorry, it's just bogus what you're saying, right? So we need to make that point, and you can make that point whenever you are questioned on halal slaughter. But a little bit of a digress because we're talking about anti-Semitism. So do I think Rupert Lowe is an anti-Semite? No, I do not think Rupert Lowe is an anti-Semite whatsoever. I don't think he's an anti-Semite because if you actually look at the statement he has made on this issue, sometime this week he made the statement, and he said that, for all I care, Israel should wipe Hamas from the face of the planet, wipe them, get rid of them, remove them, and if anything, we remove the Islamists from this country to protect the Jews of the UK. Oh my goodness. This is the hypocrisy we're talking about. You want to ban halal slaughter, but you don't want to ban kosher slaughter at first. You want to deport Muslims from this country, but you don't want to deport Jews. No, the Jews can stay, no problem, but we'll deport the Muslims. Do you not see the hypocrisy? You want to ban Sharia councils, not courts, councils, family matter councils, but you want to keep the Beth Din courts, the Jewish courts, which again are family. I'm not going to say that the Jewish courts are, actually running a parallel legal system. They're not, right? I'm being consistent. They are both family matter courts, right? Or councils is a better word to describe them. So Rupert Lowe is a hypocritical scumbag with all respect. Charlie Downs is a little bit better. He's a bit younger. And it doesn't seem as malign with how he describes these issues. He does have some crazy takes as well. But I feel like you sit down with him and you can really flesh out these arguments. Rupert Lowe doesn't really believe in anything. He's just like I said, a scumbag. He's a scumbag. Sorry to say, but he's a scumbag, right? So is he an anti-Semite? No, I think he's actually a Zionist. If I was to sit him down right now, I could get him to say he was a Zionist, right? He believes in Israel. He probably loves Israel. He probably will take a trip to Israel if he were made prime minister, which would never happen. So he's a Zionist. He's not an anti-Semite, right? He is not an anti-Semite in the slightest, right? In the slightest. But that doesn't mean he isn't still wrong. Is he an Islamophobic bigot? Is he a Muslim bigot? Anti-Islam bigot? Yes, he is. He hates Muslims. He doesn't care about Jews, right? He doesn't care about Jews. And if anything, he's afraid to criticize Jews. He's afraid to condemn the Beth Din courts and the kosher slaughter. You have to push him to condemn the kosher slaughter and ban the kosher slaughter. He's a hypocrite, a complete and utter hypocrite. And we will continue to debunk this scumbag, right? At the outset, I want to have a look at an interview that I saw between Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli Army radio, right? Now, this was an interview released this week. It was between, I believe he is a father and his son was killed in Gaza, right? Member of the IDF, killed in Gaza. And what he does is he brings people onto his show who have had a similar experience to him where, like members of the IDF, and they've like a sister, a grieving widow, and they've lost like a family member because they were fighting in the IDF. But this episode is special because it's Benjamin Netanyahu, right? So Benjamin Netanyahu appears on the podcast and he says all sorts of different things, right? It's in Hebrew, so we got the transcript. And what he says, the statement that is doing the rounds, basically he is talking about World War II and how much of a help Winston Churchill and his father Rudolph were and how instrumental they were to Israel and all of that good stuff. Well, bad stuff, but how instrumental they were. And then he makes a statement. He says, "Look at Britain now. Look at the UK now. It's more like the Islamic Republic of Britain now." And he grins and he just looks so evil the way he says it. An evil guy. But what does this actually mean? Islamic Republic of Britain. What do you mean by that? What's your evidence for that? Is there any evidence for that? I think what he's saying, I think he's seething a little bit. I think he's angry. I think he's a little bit, I think we've got him a bit angry. You know why? Because although the UK hasn't, it's not even been close to perfect on this issue, and it started off really bad. Under Sunak and under Starmer, they were just providing like willy-nilly everything. Anything and everything the Israelis wanted, we would just give them, right? No scrutiny, no pushback. I mean, this is not healthy for any country. To be providing them arms, providing them humanitarian aid, providing them all of this, and then just leaving the Gazans to die, right? But as of late, we've seen a bit of difference. Burnham comes in, he apologizes for the conduct in Gaza. Smotrich and Ben-Gvir are sanctioned. The UK sanctions them too because they are. You could describe Benjamin Netanyahu as being far right. Them two are just on another level, right? they make Bibi look like a liberal. That's how bad they are. And if you want to see any evidence of that, you can just look at Ben-Gvir's Twitter. The guy is literally, I mean, he's not human. They called the Gazans subhuman. I believe it was the deputy mayor of Jerusalem called them subhuman animals, is the words they used. But the reality here is that this Ben-Gvir guy is quite literally, if you can say some of the statements he said, he is subhuman, I'm sorry to say. And he is a human animal, I'm sorry to say. So they've sanctioned them too. They have banned trade coming from illegal settlements in the West Bank. And they haven't really done much more. Closer scrutiny on the state, I guess. Sort of more public statements against the Israeli action in Gaza and the territories there. So even that, right? We're still giving arms to Israel, by the way. We are still providing them. Although it doesn't make up much of their arms sales, we still are giving them arms and giving them blank checks, which is terrible. That should be completely and utterly outlawed. But we're still giving them the blank checks. But even with little criticism, even sanctioning some of the rabid, radical guys in Bibi's cabinet, even doing that, and this is what we get back. With all the money and arms and weaponry we've supplied you, and what do you call us? The Islamic Republic of Britain. What is your evidence for that? What is your evidence for saying we are, some Islamic Republic? What's your evidence? Do you know the percent of Muslims here in the UK? Do you know? Bibi, do you know? I don't think you do know. Right? 6.5%. 6.5% of Muslims in the UK. 2.7% are Pakistanis, right? So 2.7% of the UK are Pakistani. And this is a takeover. This is the Islamic Republic. Any other country, you put 2.7% Pakistanis in that country, does that make them an Islamic country? Are you retarded? Are you retarded? Come on, man. Like, genuinely. What is going on here? He appears on this interview and he declares the UK is in like some sort of Islamic caliphate. What? Because we've pushed back on you the smallest amount. And this is what we get in return. And this is the problem, is that Bibi will say a statement like this in Israel and we'll react the same way I've just reacted now. And how the Israelis will eat this up. This will actually play very well in Israel. Obviously, like I've said, Bibi is facing a re-election in October, and he wants to win, of course. So he's doing the rounds, he's appearing on different podcasts and whatnot, and he'll continue to do this up and until October, and we'll see how he does. Whoever replaces him or whether he stays as an incumbent, it doesn't matter. We're just going to get the same old policy. If anything, the public are pushing Netanyahu for not doing more, for not being more aggressive. It's baked into their culture, their way of life, right? These types of statements play well. And that should tell you about the country we're dealing with here, Israel, and the atrocities that the state has committed, not just these past 3 years, but really across the Middle East since their inception. Bibi talks about Churchill during the 67 war, 1967 Six-Day War, and he talks about them helping us and whatnot. Do you think that's a good thing? Do you think even Churchill fans would be supportive of that in 2026? What did you do during 67? You illegally took Gaza, the West Bank, east to Jerusalem, the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, not just Palestine, but Syria, Egypt. Why are you taking all this land? We gave you some land. Are you not okay to just stay there? Why'd you have to keep on expanding? And this is the problem. It's a colonial state, right? It's an imperial state. Their sole reason for being there is to take and take and take and take. And what's going to happen? They're just going to keep on taking. They're just going to keep on taking. Is that what's going to happen? So, what do we say to this? We push back on this. We push back on these points. And we should, as a government, I'm not sure what Burnham's going to do. I heard there was some people criticising him for attending an arms summit or something along those lines. Again, he's prime minister. There's very little you can do as prime minister, contrary to what many people think. You know, we do have a relationship, and Israel is considered an ally to us. But with these types of statements, I being prime minister, you think you can make these statements to us? You are our client state, not the other way around, right? You are our vassal state. You act in our interests. If we're giving you money and giving you arms and giving you weaponry, then you do as we say. You think you can just criticize us like that in Hebrew, like we're not going to understand it, it's not going to do the rounds, to be able to be hidden. You scumbag. This is what Benjamin Netanyahu is, a scumbag, a war criminal, and he should be charged with war crimes as he has been. He thinks he can evade that. So it doesn't matter even if he doesn't win in October. There's a lot that this man is responsible for, and whether he is in power or he's not in power, he will continue to be responsible for these actions and killing 70,000 Gazans. That's an underestimate. Could be a lot more. 100,000 plus indirect deaths and suffering and injury, killing, 200 plus journalists and destroying college campuses. You think you can move on to Iran, and then what's next after that? Is it Turkey next? Because you don't like Turkey. So they're just going to carry on doing this. The moment it stops is the moment we stop supplying these countries like Israel, and really exclusively Israel, with money and with the blank check to spend it on all this weaponry and stupid ammunition. So this needs to stop. This guy is an idiot. The fact that we're even paying attention to him, the fact that he is even, controlling the most powerful superpower in the United States is mental, right? Just baffling. But, just we'll leave this guy, just a complete idiot, fool. But I think that ends the show. It's been a crazy show, but alhamdulillah, we've gone over a lot. And inshallah, I will see you next Sunday. As usual, I've been Sami, Team Asim. And like I said, I'll see you next Sunday, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.